when I finished there, I said, I'm going to keep going because nobody will ever tell me again they're going to find me because I don't have the credentials, right? So that's when I got my associates, and then I went into a program. I found it was a Bachelor of Fine Arts with Visual and Technical Communications.
This is the Living Numbers podcast where everyone is interesting if you ask the right questions. Of course, make sure you all share, rate, review. You all know this is not your first routine. Go ahead and like this and 5 stars. Like, come on, let's do it. Also, merch link in the description. Cop some merch, hoodies, t-shirts. I even have phone cases. So there we go. Now that we've paid the bills. Of course, when we have somebody on for the first time, they have to get an elaborate intro. So, this person here is hailing from DeRidder, Louisiana. She received her bachelor's in visual and technical communications, I believe from Southeast College. And she earned her MBA from Belhaven University. Correct me if I'm wrong when I'm finished.
That is correct.
At Houston Community College, she served as web content administrator and adjunct professor teaching small business courses to the future CEOs of America. One of the wisest, sweetest, and most understanding people that I know. Mother to us all, I present the Stephanie Jones, but more affectionately known as Mama J. Say hello to the people.
Hello, everybody. Tony, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. It was HCC and American Intercontinental University that I got my bachelor's. But thank you so much. That was an awesome intro. I appreciate it. Hello,
I'm
everybody.
glad I tried to do you justice
You did.
because I'm sure everyone who knows us and is going to watch this, there's so much to you that it's hard to get you into this little 30-second intro. So we are going to kick off with our first number, and we have to go back to where it all started.
Okay.
So in 1903, our first number, Dorito was incorporated as a town.
Okay.
What was it like growing up in this small town? I mean, I'm sure to you everything was normal. It was your life, but what was it like growing up? I guess like in the sticks, I would say.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part of it was when we got to DeRidder, my father was in the military, so he was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the Army, and I was in the third grade when we got there. So yeah, and
Mm.
we kind of described the area that we lived in to the T. It was like a little house with a lot of woods around it, kind of thing. And we stayed there. It was right next to the elementary school. But growing up in that time frame, it was kind of like normal because we came from my mom's hometown, which was in Garyville, Louisiana, and it was like country as well. So, we felt commonplace because we were used to a small place. And it was where when you get to know people, like everybody knows your name kind of thing. So it was really fun, really, really, really fun as a child because it did not have come with a lot of pressure or a lot of,
Mm.
you had to be a certain thing or a certain way to fit in. It was just a really good, comfortable place to be.
Did you ever think like this is a place that you would stay like for your entire life? Because some people they grow up in these small towns and they never leave. Did you ever feel like you would be that person too?
I never felt that way. I didn't know how I would get out of DeRidder, but I never felt like that would be the place. And simply because as I grew, I know there were limitations on the types of jobs that were there. There were limitations on like what you can actually advance in. There was not a whole lot going on. Things grew after I left to where
Mm.
now there's more exposure. There's more things incorporated within the area. more businesses grew and that kind of thing. But it wasn't that as I was growing up. So I never looked at that as a place to live, but I didn't know how I was going to get out of there.
What's your best Dorita story? I know Pops always talks about Black Larry. He's the famous person that I've never met in real life, but his memory lives on. So,
Yeah.
do you have any people growing up that you were around that you just have some great stories with?
I would have to say it was high school and just just really cool friends. I remember it was Marilyn, Clara, Weta, and who else? The four of us, Marilyn, Clara, Weta, and myself. Yeah, the four of us, we just had really good chemistry. We grew up well. They were
Mm.
like Weta and Clara were cheerleaders. I was not in the cheerleader. I played volleyball. And then Maryland, I'm not sure. I don't remember what Maryland did, but we clicked and we did everything together. We went to parties together. We had fun together. We just did stuff, and that was like my time because after we graduated, everybody immediately just kind of like went their separate ways. Marilyn and I went to college together, but I didn't stay there. I got married and had a baby, and so my life took off in a whole different direction. But yeah,
Mm.
that Marilyn and Claire, and even today, I can connect with the three of those, and it's just kind of like old times. We just kind of catch up and keep going, keep it going. That was good.
That chemistry, when you have it with somebody, is very hard to describe. Like there's just this unsaid kind of understanding that everybody has with one another. And when you have friends like that, you really try to keep that going. So, are there some people that you would say outside of them as you begin to grow and branch out, right? You go to college that kind of caught your not caught your eye, but that you built that same chemistry with.
Yes, and they would have to be the people that I started working with at Houston Community
Mm.
College. I started working there in I think it was 1995. It was 1995 when I started working there. And I worked first of all as a student in the dean's office, and
Mhm.
I worked with the academic dean for about 3 years, and then I switched over and worked with the student dean. And during those times, I engaged with people who started working in the college as well. But Regina Wilson and Cheryl George were two people that that we connected with, and we just formed a bond, and we were always there for each other throughout my whole experience at Houston Community College. They're still there, and they're younger than I was, but we connected, and just about we relied on each other for everything, for strength, for like when things were tough or whatever. Just we did, but we encouraged each other, and we continue because those are the ladies that I went to school with in terms of getting my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, and we just kind of like helped each other along. So they would be the ones that I say that I form bonds with and relationships with that I still have even to today.
How would you compare, growing in a small town and then ended up in a big city like Houston? How would you compare the two? Like, what are the pros and cons from moving from a small town to a big city?
At first I thought it would be hard, and then I really had heard horror stories about Houston and crime and that kind of thing. That's kind of like the bad news, kind of like meets you. But what I realized was that the areas that I stayed in, they were not crime ridden, and it was easy for me to interact with people around me, and I think that's been the most thing that I could form relationships with people around me instead of just kind of like
Mm.
being in a place where I just didn't know nobody and didn't know how to reach out. I think what happened in my growing up, and it's so funny because I always think of this. I always go back to this, and I'll share, and then I'll tell you why. I remember when we used to walk down the street, like when we would go visit one another. We walked down the street, and We always say, I'm going to go walk my friend home and they're going to walk me halfway back. We always had this thing. But as we were walking down the street, it's kind of almost like you had to speak to people everywhere. Like, people on the side, how you doing? Good evening, miss, da, 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 da. And you had to do that.
Mm.
And when you didn't do that, they would call your mom and say, well, and they called me Tisha back then. Tisha passed by here and she didn't even speak. And so I learned that because mom said that was always important, that you acknowledge the people that you didn't sleep with. So it's like, you
Mm.
woke up with your sister. It's like, but everybody else, you speak to them. Even when you walk into a room with people, you speak to them because that's just right etiquette in terms of dealing with people and interacting with people. So that was really, really, that came as a norm for me. So when I was able to do that and gravitate to people, other people who were like-minded, or they were grew up the same way, they responded back. So that was always a easy way to make a connection. I remember walking in when my husband was stationed in Fort Ord, California. I remember I worked in the hospital in records at that time. And I was walking down the hall, coming back from getting coffee or something. And military soldiers were lined up on each side. And I was like, oh my God, I got to walk through this. And so as I was
Mm.
walking through, I felt like, okay, I need to say something. So I said, hey, y'all. And here I am in California saying, hey, y'all. And people looked at me. They kind of almost laughed, when I walked through, because I just felt like I need to speak. That's what mom taught me to do. And so I did that, and we just kind of laughed it on. We all just kind of like, I felt a lot at ease, after that. But speaking and engaging with people, that has always been something I learned as a child. So that made the transition easier, no matter where I was, and it just made it easy for me to connect.
It's nothing like just speaking to somebody, saying hello or what's up or hey y'all, whatever lingo you choose to use,
Exactly.
it disarms people, So you may find yourself in a place that's not great as far as reputation is concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, as you begin to speak and form these relationships where I don't necessarily need anything from you,
Right.
I'm just speaking to be polite and to see how
Yes.
you're doing. You never, I mean, it can take you a long way.
That's
I'll tell
right.
you this short story. It was just finals week last week, as I'm a
Mm-hmm.
high school teacher and I've got these kids for anywhere from 13, 14 to 18, 19. And if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't get it right the first couple times around, maybe 20.
Okay.
So during this time, people are kind of in and out of classrooms. Some people, they don't have anything to do, they're exempt, whatever. So I'm the classroom that people like to come to. And a lot of times I tell people, no, get out of here, get away. We are busy. And then other times, if you catch me on the right day, sure, come in if you with somebody that I like.
Mm-hmm.
So this kid comes in that I know. I'm like, hey, what's up? His sister is in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend of his comes in. And so one thing that I always tell kids, or I ask them this question, I say, when you go to somebody's house, who do you speak to first? And like, I speak to the people that live there, parents. I'm like, okay, so when you come into my room, who you speak to first? Exactly. So
It's
you come
good
talk to me first, say what's up, and then maybe I'll let you stay. So we had a little laugh about that or whatever, but it just goes back to what you just said, just kind of being brought up in that kind of small town and speaking to people and building those relationships. And it's so important. And we can't go through life without building relationships. And that actually brings us to our next number
Okay.
because you've alluded to this person a few times already.
Okay.
But your husband, also known as Pops, Papa
Mm-hmm.
J,
Mm-hmm.
and our next number, and when I saw this number, I was like, I haven't seen that. So the number is 103K,
Mm-hmm.
which means $103,000 in
Right.
this reference. And that is the average pastor salary in Houston. So I'm like, maybe at the big time places, but Houston has a lot of mega churches. But that's neither here nor there. You actually are married to a pastor, And I want you to give us the origins. How did you all meet? Because I know y'all been together for a long, long time and known each other for a long, long time. So I think this story takes us back to a familiar place.
Yeah. So high school. Actually,
Mhm.
when I got to DeRitter, we were in third grade together. There's the same third grade class, and most of our classes were the same because in a small town, your grade travels with you. So the people that you're in class with, it just travels. And so, sixth grade, I got disconnected from the group that we traveled with, and because my mom felt like I needed to be in a different class for some reason. I think later she realized that was a mistake, but I forgave her for it. So after in our the summer of my 11th grade year, um, Carlos and I connected. And, he was a pretty popular guy, basketball player. He did a lot of sports. And so I didn't really find him interesting because I think I didn't go for the whole popularity thing because I just felt like, yeah, 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 you ain't all that kind of thing. And so he called me one day and he asked me, well, he just started talking and then he said, you want to go to a party or whatever. So I said, yeah, I'll go. I didn't have a boy. I didn't have, it didn't really dawn on me that I did not have a boyfriend through school. And so at
Mm.
that time when he asked me, I was like, yeah, sure, it's okay. So we went to the party and, we had several times that we went out together. And on one of those dates he said to me, he said, uh, he said, I love you or something. And I said, one day. So then he said, well, I'm going to make you love you kind of thing. So, it was like, it did not phase me. I mean, I didn't see him as all the other girls saw him. I just saw him as another guy. And I was not, I mean, I love going to the sports, to the games and stuff, because that's where we had our fun. But I really didn't, it wasn't exciting to me. So anyway, that was his challenge that he put himself on, and he did. He actually poured into the relationship, and we did have a thing going on. And so from that summer of the 10th grade, through life, we got married in December of 75, graduated in 75. And we got married and had our little family, and he went in the military. And so we traveled, but that was it. We were together from that point on. And it was comfortable because we grew up together, we spent a lot of time together, and we knew each other. I mean, of course, when you're on a marriage, knowing each other in marriage, that's totally different, but it was
Mm.
okay. We learned how to work through a lot of things, and I think I not knowing a lot about marriage, and then went away from where family was, where I can have my resources to call on or whatever. It's looked like we were way away, and that was the other thing. Being in California, you were so far away from everything. It's kind of like you have to now really depend on God for everything, and that's was a part of that even in marriage, that when things got rough, you can't just run home, or where you gonna run, because
Mm-mm.
California, everything was so expensive, and we were on a military budget, so you just can't go get in a hotel. You just have to kind of stay there and work through the things that you are struggling with, that kind of thing. But we learned through it all, and we grew through it all. So that's kind of like where all that happened.
How come y'all got married so early? Because you were probably what, 18 or 19?
I was 18. I was 18. I was pregnant. I got pregnant in the like my senior year, at the end of my senior year. And I went to
Mm.
college. I went to the University of Southwest Louisiana, which was in Lafayette. It's a different name now. I don't remember what it is now. But I went for that summer. And that summer I was so miserable because it's like, think I'm pregnant. I think I'm pregnant. And my girlfriend Marilyn, because she went with me, she was she went to the same college that I did, so we roomed together. And she said, "Did you tell your mom?" She said, "Oh, did you tell your mom you need to go get checked?" I said, "No, I didn't. I
Oh
can't tell
no.
my mom that." So it's kind of like went through the whole ordeal, and then she encouraged me to tell mom. I told mom, and so she came and got me. We confirmed everything. I went back to school, but then I decided to sit out the next semester because I don't know. I guess I just didn't know how to be or whatever. But anyway, Carlos went to the military, and I think it was August of that year. And then in December of that year, that's when he came back. We got married, and then in February we had my first daughter, Tamara. Um, but that was kind of like the early marriage thing. And then from that point on, we took off and went to North Carolina, where we were stationed at Fort Bragg, and we just moved around from there. So that's what took me out of DeRidder, gave me exposure to life and marriage and, all of that all at once.
Mm.
I wouldn't advise it to anybody because, that's not an easy journey, but, we did it. God bless us to do
You didn't know how you was gonna get out,
it.
but
No,
sure enough, you got out.
I got out.
What are some of the I don't know, some of your most fond memories of, kind of being married to somebody in the military and moving around so much?
I enjoyed the travel of it, just being able to go to
Mm.
different places and then meet different people, in those places. I enjoyed the working because, we always were able to find churches that were more smaller and membership and more personable. And so that's kind of like was the fun stuff that kind of like reminded you of home, because even though you're in a
Mm.
faraway place, you connect with people and then you are united, so you find yourself spending most of your time with those people and activities and events, and just a good feeling of being away from home. And then there were people there that you could talk to and you can rely on, and you knew that you can trust because you built those relationships. So those people were very helpful in the time frame that we were trying to establish and grow, and very supportive. They were very supportive of us.
That reminds me of when I went to China. One of the first things that we did was we found a church to be a part of. And so, like you said, you start spending most of the time with these people.
Yeah.
You go to Bible studies. Bible studies are always the best because
Yes.
that's when you really start to build those relationships and break bread with each other and discuss things that are in the Bible, outside of the Bible.
Yeah.
And so, being at those Bible studies, and then myself being able to teach those Bible studies too, which is
Yeah.
something that I always enjoy, they just bring people together. And so it's nothing like having a good church to belong to. And eventually, your husband became a pastor, which he tells this
Yeah.
story all the time. But how did you see it from your perspective? Kind of knowing y'all, I know that y'all had some rough beginnings, but how did you kind of see that come full circle? Because you had been kind of in this life since 6 years old.
Yeah. The funny part about how all of that just really came to a head was, like I said, I always went to Bible study. I always, was a part of church and that kind of thing. And in California, when it was time to go to church, my husband would go to the beach. He'd take my daughter and they go to the beach. And because where we lived was right close to the Pacific Ocean. And so it was just such a beautiful place. But that's what he did. And it wasn't until, I mean, he came to church with me periodically, but like I can almost count the times that he came. But when we moved to Houston, we started going to a mega church, if you will. And as we went to that church, it was Brentwood Baptist Church in the southwest area of Houston. And as we went to that church, one of the things that we did, we got involved. I got involved in youth ministry was my thing. I did youth ministry for 19 years. Carlos, on the other hand, I was a part of a home sale Bible study, and we would meet like I think it was every Saturday night. And Carlos would never come. He very, very seldom. If he went to church, that was one thing, but he never went to Bible study with me. And so one day I decided to ask him to come to my house and have Bible study in my house, because we moved around from house to house.
Mm.
Well, Carlos decided not to be home that day, so he went out and just hung out with his friends. And then, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he comes back home. Just to make sure he misses the Bible study. I was I had the Bible study praying for him. We were just praying like, Lord, just, open his eyes, turn around. And one day he decided he was going to go to Bible study. And at that time, something different had happened in his life. And it was crazy because he came to the Bible study and then he asked the Bible study teacher, could he teach the next lesson? And I was like, wow.
What?
Yeah, because I'm thinking, and so I was like, oh Lord, he's gonna embarrass himself, he's gonna embarrass me. And it's kind of like I got the whisper in my ear, like the Lord in the voice that she was saying with me, this is what you've been praying for. And so I
Mm.
didn't say anything. I just like, okay, I'm stepping back out of the way. And so he taught that next week and he taught and he just blew it away. It was like he had
Wow.
been teaching all along, and it just really shocked me. So much so, but after that, he became a Sunday school teacher, and he taught a class. He started with one member, and by the time we left Brentwood, that class was over like 200 people. And I
Wow.
was just like blown away. But he did get ordained to preach, to be to preach. And he started, preaching even while we were still there. And after we left that church, then that's when we started, the church that he pastored for 7 years. That's kind of how that all came about.
How did that change things at home? Because, going from, you know, avoiding church at all costs to now being the Bible study teacher,
Yeah.
I'm sure that had to change things at home and how he dealt with you and the kids and different situations. So please tell us.
It did, and it was really it wasn't really an easy transition. I mean, I was very accepting of him, coming in because that was what I was praying for. But when he came in and when he started to grow, it's like he started to his attention focused on um the Bible and what he was teaching, and I think he lost a um what was it, something that interacted with me in terms of, now he wants me to be at this place because he's at this place, and not necessarily that I wasn't, but it's like, there was no humanness that he had to deal with. And so I think
Mm.
he lost his place for humanity in that, was always, I, I, for lack of a better term, the holier than thou with, I'm up here kind of thing, and that kind of thing. So there was some major adjustments that we had to do. And we started having Bible study. We actually started having church in our home. And as we
Mm.
had church in our home, I was the one doing all the work. He was the one like fellowshipping and hanging out with the people and teaching and doing all of that after, and just afterwards. So it was really hard. It became a struggle for me because I started getting getting very frustrated with the fact that I was doing all the work and he was, more or less mixing with the people and stuff. So much so till, it drove me away from wanting to have, anything at home because I know that I was going to be the one stuck with all the work of things.
Mm.
He was going to be passed in a pastor role and that kind of thing. So it wasn't until a long time after um, he was pastoring that he really came to understand why it was so burdensome for me because it was more of
Mm.
a burden than a blessing. Yeah, I wanted him to be in that role. Yeah, I wanted him, but it's kind of like, but I didn't want to be in the background where all I was doing was the work, and I was not able even to be able to appreciate being in the service or being in the Bible study, missing all of the teachings because I had to make sure that all of the logistics of things were in order and everybody was accommodated, which is it's a normal thing for me. But when you put me in
Right.
that capacity, it just was too much. It was too much. So yeah, it wasn't easy. And then after he stopped pastoring, um, I continued to move forward in ministry because it wasn't like a switch, anything I had to switch from, but he really struggled. So I think that in that time frame, it was where God had to work some things out in his life. And, he became a chaplain at the Methodist Hospital, which was really good. And I think it was more in line of where his gifts were best suited. And,
Mm,
you know, it's amazing how God moves you around and how he interacts and just kind of like reshuffles you or resurfaces you. And he was the best at what he did when he was in that role as a chaplain. So, it was a win-win for both of us because then I had the freedom again to, be engaged in ministry and learn and grow without having this heaviness, that it was just not what I wanted to do kind of thing.
it's amazing how we can be in an area that we love and enjoy, but the work can be so burdensome at times that there is no
Yes.
more love, there is no enjoyment. I don't even get to do the things that I liked about this
Yes.
area. And so
That's
now I want to get away from the area that I used to love.
for sure.
And so I'm glad that that happened
Yeah.
and things were moved around to where they could be best suited for everyone. So you already talked about what were some difficulties, but what were like the cool parts about being a first lady?
I laugh at that first lady because I hated that term, first lady, because I just like it being able to interact with the people, and I never introduced or like when somebody new came, I never introduced myself as a first lady, but and when I didn't, it's kind of like I was able to gain genuine friendships and that kind of thing.
Mm,
But whenever that term first lady came, it's almost like people like you because you were the first lady. It's like, nah, that's kind of almost superficial. I just like being me
yeah.
and, just interacting with people, just being me. So, but we had some really good, it gave me the opportunity to meet people, to engage with people, to minister to people, those kinds of things. And that's something I really enjoyed doing. And even in Bible study, I was able to just meet people where they were. At that time, I was more focused on youth ministry because that had been the area of calling where God had me to work in, and it was just good. It was so good being able to pour into people's lives and being able to help them to come into a relationship with Christ with an understanding at their level, and it was just fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So we've talked about a lot of your personal life, but professionally, you went into like web design. And
Mm-hmm.
so back in the 80s, I'm sure, well, I'll just let you tell it because I'm just thinking like who's in web design at that point? It's not what it is now. It seemed like it was just a very kind of foreign, new, untapped field. So how'd you get into web design at that time when you were going into college and just
Yeah.
had a baby and trying to figure out life professionally?
Right. Well, it was funny because as we traveled, I took classes along the way, but I didn't really engage because it was on military base. So I just kind of like taking classes, but there were classes that could transfer to a major if, the wherever I landed, wherever that would be. Um, but fast forward came to, I started working. Actually, let me go back a little bit. So in, I think that was 1980. 79, 80 is where, well, actually, it was 80, more 80, getting closer to 81. That's where I started working in. This is funny, and I got to tell it. Um, I mean, not funny, but I have to share it because I was in Fort Ord, California. That's where we were stationed. And we knew we were going to be leaving in about 6 months, right? But I got this job in an office environment, and it was the in HR. Well, while I was there, they had this thing called the Wang, Wang. Wang
Mm.
was a word processor at the time, and it was like this big, huge, monstrous piece of equipment. And so the ladies, they didn't demand that I work on it, but they told me it's like, oh, you can use the Wang if you want to, right? So the
Mm,
whole while I was there, it's like, I just kind of like stayed away from it, not really even thinking about it. I just did everything on a typewriter and start over. You mess up and start over, it's like duh. So anyway, moved to Houston. Fast forward, moved to Houston in 1981 and could not find a job. Every job interview that I went on, and I want to say it was probably between 10 and maybe 19 job
mm,
interviews that I went on. Every one of them asked me, do you have any Wang experience? I just like scream, and it's like, wow. So the job that I did get, it was a civil service because I was working in civil service at the time in in California. So when I started working in civil service here, I got a job at the Army Reserve. It was 75th Mac over on OST at the time. And the guy, he welcomed me in and he says, well, we got the Wang over there, but we don't have any money to send you to training. I said, give me
mm,
the because I would never again have that experience.
mm,
So I learned it. I self-taught. I started to taught myself how to use the Wang on the job. And then I taught everybody in my area how to use the Wang. And then everybody who came in, then it was expected me to train others. I was even training
mm.
people outside of my department. And probably after 2 years, one of the ladies out of the financial department came over and she says, um, I have a person that's at one of the business colleges that wants to interview you for a teaching job. And I was like, but
Ooh.
I've never taught before. She said, you've taught everybody here how to use the Wang, and that's what you would be teaching. And so when I went on the interview and I, did a little test or whatever and talked to her, she says, when can you start? I was like, wow. So I immediately gave my 2 week notice at the reserve center, and I started training. I started teaching in a vocational school. And I was teaching people not only on the Wang, but how to use the other word processors. And there was probably 3 or 4 other ones that I learned. And then I
Wow.
started teaching and training other people on it. So when there was this lady that I worked that came in and she got a job and she was over everything. And because I did not have a degree, she did everything she could to kind of push me out, right? So, I got fired just because of the fact that, I didn't have the degree or the credentials, so to speak, as she was expecting. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to get back in school. So
This
that's
ain't
when I
gonna stop
started
me next
because,
time.
yeah. And because I had all this background, that's how I was able to qualify to work in the dean's office. And so from one dean to another, but while I was in school, one of the things that I was thinking about was I loved photography. That's been my passion. And I was like, wow, how can I do photography in this? And there was these little cards that was coming around that was, I think Hallmark or somebody with little kids dressed up as big people. And I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to create
Yeah.
cards, and highlight little people or whatever, kind of thing. So I was like, okay, what program can I focus on, while I was in school? Because at that time was going to get an associate degree because I was at the community college. And then they had just started bringing in programs with the all the graphic technology and that kind of thing. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, man, I really want to explore that. So I did. I got into that. I got to exploring it and everything. And actually, my degree went toward um, technical communications, in which I learned all of the Adobe programs and that kind of thing, and I absolutely loved it. Um, when I finished there, I said I'm gonna keep going because nobody will ever tell me again they're gonna find me because I don't have the credentials, right? So that's when I got my associates, and then I went into a program. I found it was a Bachelor of Fine Arts with Visual and Technical Communications, and that was at American International University, and they had just opened a branch in on Richmond in the Houston area.
Mm.
So I started going to that one, and that's when I got my degree and I got my BFA. And I was just so proud to say I have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual and Technical Communication. And now you can't stop me. Nobody can stop me. So then I
Yep.
said to myself, I was like, okay, now what am I going to do with it? And I remember just kind of like pondering over that because I was still working and going to school. And I kept saying, what am I going to do with it? And it just came up to me, go web, go with the web, go with the web. And web was the easy thing for me because I didn't have the natural creativity for, the design of all of the other programs, but web I can do just like that. I could do it. And when I went to started applying for jobs, at my current job, there a position came open for web, and I said, I don't know. It's like that's really taking a major step. But then I talked to the person who was, like instrumental in where the job was going to be under, and they told me about what
Hmm.
it consisted of, and I said I can do that. So then I applied for
Yeah.
the job and I got it. Now that was in 2010. That was in 2010. Then by this time, like I said, I
Hmm.
had already had my bachelor's and my associate, and they both were in the same area. So it just took off. And while I was there, the web at the college, it started moving in the direction where um, it was at that time under communications department, and it was going to move to IT. I wasn't really sure. I was tossed because a lot of what I had was IT, but then with the graphics part, that was communications. So I was like in a tale of two cities, but the two cities was fighting for the web, and I was like the one that got pulled back and forth with the departments. But anyway, started working in the web in communications, moved to IT because the web moved to IT. Then 3 years later, it moved back to communications. I moved with it. So, but I was always the main source who was working web stuff, and it just I love doing it. And actually, each position that I was in at that point was created for me, and I dared to
Wow.
move because it I mean it was designed for me with the salary and that kind of thing, and no matter what the implications were or what I had to deal with and the frustrations I had to deal with, I stayed because that job was created for me and I knew it had my name on it. So I stuck it through. Yeah.
I remember. I
Yeah.
remember those times
Yeah.
going back and forth. I don't know what they're gonna do. Y'all pray for me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember. I also remember you and um, Adrian and Randall. Y'all were going through this course for nonprofits and running
Yes.
small businesses. So
Yes.
how did you, I mean, it's an easy through line, but what was the experience that made you go, okay, I want to actually go here and get some paper behind the information that I know and the things that I've kind of been doing already for years?
Well, and that kind of started like with my MBA. So when I was
Mm,
doing that, when I was doing the work, I one of the things I learned in IT was that you almost had to have a business background in addition to all of your technology and that kind of thing. And then I was able to work with different people on my job to see how that works because analyzing systems and analyzing applications and that kind of thing and seeing how they best fit into, certain jobs and certain office structures and that kind of thing, that's kind of what I learned there. And so I didn't really even understand IT. And I just kind of like stayed away from, oh, I don't do that. So boring. It's not interacting with people. But I made it that kind of interactivity. And so once I got my MBA in business, then that next level was the nonprofits. Like, I need to do that because I always have been business minded, but then that was pushing me more in a direction to learn how to do it from a nonprofit perspective. Even though I didn't
hmm
finish, I did get it was my niece Adrian, Regina, the girl that I went to school, that I work with. And then my daughter, Carla, and then myself, we all started the program together. But Carla was the only one that finished. And the funny part about that is they denied Carla getting into the program because she had some challenges getting her bachelor's and her growth with her grades. But I wrote a letter to the person who was over, and I said, "Hey, look, out of all of us, she is the one that needs to do it." And she ended up acing it, and she came out
Yeah.
really with honors. But he said, "Okay, I'm going to give her that opportunity. Y'all are going to be a group and work together. I'm going to give her that opportunity to work with you guys, and
Wow.
hopefully she'll do." And the rest of us Adrian finished after her. Regina just kind of, I woke up one day and decided I'm not going to write another paper. So I got on the computer and checked myself out. I said, I got one master's, I'm good, and Regina did the same. And so Carla finished first and Adrian finished. But yeah, we all kind of helped each other along
That just reminds me of like, I have a coworker. She's always asking me, when you gonna go back and get your master's? When you going back to school? And I just tell her, I'm not going back to school. It's not happening, especially if I have to pay for it. It's
the
just
way.
not in the cards.
So
For what I
much.
want to do, why? Why do I need to go back to
Mhm.
school? So you brought up photography, which brings us to our last number here. And
Okay.
on your website, you have 5 categories
Mhm.
of photography. Do you know what they are on the spot?
So I have events, I have children, I have what else do I have? I have weddings. I think I have weddings. I have couples, and then I have like high school, um,
Yep.
like high school or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
There you go. Well done.
yes.
Sometimes I ask people about their website and they go, "Man, I made that thing so long ago."
I try to stay with it.
I know. You talked about photography earlier and just your passion for
Mhm.
it. Where did that come from? Number one, and then number two, how did you kind of turn the corner to start actually working in that area?
Photography was something I always loved, and everywhere I went, I was taking pictures. I had my camera. It's kind of like it was tied to my hip. Wherever you saw me, you saw my camera. And I
Hmm.
just really like capturing the moment. I love being able to share with people what they experience, because I captured it all, and then now they get to relive it because they see the images that I captured in my photos. So it was always something. It did not become a thing until my nephew, who was living with me at the time, Trey Trapp, he said he was trying to get into singing, and he had to do some stuff and send a portfolio of photos and that kind of thing. And he said, "Auntie Stephanie, would you mind taking my photos for whatever it was that he had to submit?" I said, "Sure." So I went out and we just played with it, and we just had fun, and we went to different areas and different sites and different poses, and it was just amazing. I was like, I'm actually doing a photo shoot. And when I look back at some of the photos, it was like, I can do this. And so that at that point, that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna make this a thing. I'm going professional with this. And I knew I still
Hmm.
had a lot to learn, but I had the craft. I was able to take that camera and make it do some things that, the person could use. And so that's kind of where it got started at. And from that point on, it's like every opportunity that I got, people would pass the word around, and people would ask, could you do my photos?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So yeah, that's kind of where I'm not that good in the business part of it, because I'll do a lot of promo kind of things, and it's like, okay, at some point I got to get serious about this. But yeah, that's kind of like where it started.
What events do you like doing the most?
I like events. Like we had an event this Sunday where we had like an angel tree event, a Christmas, focus
Hmm.
thing. I love festive things. I love those kinds of things to be able to capture everything that happened during that time because, like for me, if my thought is if you weren't there and you looked at the pictures, I mean, I'm sure you're going to see the video, but if you look at the pictures, you can almost get a feel for like what happened and you felt the excitement in the room from the pictures and so it's events that that there's something exciting going on. Weddings, I don't gravitate to them unless they're smaller because they require a whole lot of other things. And we did a wedding for one of our church members, but she had three photographers, and we all knew each other, so we were able to share the role. There's a major responsibility for the as larger a larger event, so I keep getting called back to events that are manageable, and I would say like maybe 300 total kind of thing, or on down. But I don't like to, like I said, weddings, they require so much more, so I'll do a small one, but I won't do a big one by myself. But I just enjoy taking the moment and turning it into memory so that the
Mm.
person can experience it after the event is over.
Uh, Definitely know firsthand that you do great work with photos because you did mine, and I see your photos all the time. You do the photos for our church, so you're awesome at that. And there'll definitely be an opportunity for you to plug your business soon.
Thank you, thank
But
you,
you've
thank
moved into a place that we all hope that we can get to one day, and that place is retirement.
you.
Are you
Yes.
aware of the 4% rule? Have you seen it before? Have you heard of it before?
I have not. I have not. And when you put it down, and I think, and here's the thing, I think more that I haven't because I was so ready to get out of my job, I didn't even calculate I was like, yes, I'm able. And financially, we can handle the household and that kind of thing. So I have not, Tony. I
Mhm.
had not until you put that in there. So I didn't even know that existed.
So I was just looking for a number, and I think I Googled like how much money do you need to retire? And then I saw this and I was like, this could be pretty informative. So the 4% rule says if you divide your desired annual retirement income by 4%, then you'll kind of get the number that you need to get to. So for example, because I'm sure people
Mm-hmm.
will follow this and go, "What? How do I do that?" So for an income of $80,000, you need to a retirement nest egg of about $2 million. I
Oh,
just thought that's crazy.
yeah.
Who's if you've got 2 million bucks, you probably are fine with retirement. You don't have to
Right.
worry about it.
Yeah.
So how's retirement been for you? What are some things that you've been able to do that you were looking forward to?
So it's really been good. It's really been good because it's given me such a freedom to work in areas that I really enjoy working in, even in my volunteer services for the church. It gives me the freedom to do that without being overwhelmed with, work, and then retirement, and, being able to volunteer time. So I've loved it from that perspective. I remember when I first retired, my mom told me, she said, make a schedule so that you can put everything, in order the way you want to do it. And then you don't find yourself, she said, because sometimes you feel like you got time to do this, you got time to do that, and you don't realize time will run together if you don't have it organized. So still,
Mhm.
I'm doing that a whole lot better because she made me focus on that. So that's something that I am constantly trying to do. I've got days set up where I can do this, that's that, and then my husband has business where we both car business. And at the time when I first retired, like we were just moving cars, and it would cut into my time. And I was like, this is not why I retired to work that hard. And so so we got that, where that is confined to like different airports. So I don't have to work as hard in that area. But the thing that my desire is, and I'm moving in that direction, and I see more and more moving forward. I just haven't moved as fast as I want to, and that's okay. Moving into, I want to do photography um, in the different areas that I mentioned. I have not ever like really done advertising. My advertisement has been word of mouth, so people come to me based on somebody that has gone to them. I haven't done a lot of social media with it, and I have posted some of the stuff that I've done, but not really made a big push. But now I think I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to go in that
Mm.
area. I have this desire to use photography too, to make greeting cards, because that's actually where I started from the beginning. I wanted to do
Hallmark.
that, and now it's kind of like full circle. It's like, okay, now I can go back into it and just do it. So I think this year has been a year for defining that a little bit more. Parents were sick, and then I lost both of them, so that took me away. That was a priority that took me away, and now I'm just at the point where I can focus and do that. And I'm almost there. I got all the things in place now, and I've started to do it a little bit more. And so I'm moving in that area. I got to get that marketing and that social media, that part together. That's kind of like where I'm lacking at now, but everything else is in time, and I mean on point, and it's ready to go.
Have you had any other like unexpected hurdles? I mean, those are some, the business stuff and then your parents. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
some things that are very difficult, but
Right.
any other things where you go, huh, I didn't see that coming.
No, no, I think it's more of time, and actually just
Mm.
designating that time, and being intentional about it, because I kind of like let it go to where it's okay, I'll get to that, but now I have to put it on the calendar and says, no, I'm going to do this, and time it out. I'm going to do this here. I'm going to do this and do that, and then just have an organized plan and structure for that, because time can get away from you. I mean, there's always
Hmm.
something else you can go and do, and that's what I had to come to the realization that all the extra stuff takes me away from the thing that I want to do most.
And then sometimes you just don't want to do anything.
That's, and that's so true. I've had those days, and it's like, no, I'm just gonna stay here and just be still. Be still. You're right. You're so right.
Wow. We've come to the part in the show where we do our three whats. And I ask you three questions, and you can go as long or as short as you would like. So,
Okay.
for our first one, what's an opinion that you have that will be considered unpopular?
Um, I don't like a lot of traditions. If it's too traditional, I say,
Mm.
that's just tradition. I don't do that. That kind of thing. I don't like traditions that make you do the same thing over and over and over and over again. I don't like.
Boring.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm with that. Okay, if you weren't doing photography, right? Because you're retired, you can kind of do
Mhm.
whatever you want.
Yeah.
What would you be doing?
I think I would focus more on administration, and just helping people out in whichever ways I can, or ministry, between administration and ministry, doing whatever I could to help other people at whatever level.
Helping people. That's not a surprise. Okay, with helping people, what advice would you give to someone in high school?
I would tell them to, first of all, make the best of high school. Learn as much as you can. Stay focused. I think I lost my focus in my senior year because things can get so relaxed. But I would say stay
Mm.
focused, stay in it, do the best you can, do the most you can, so that when you get out, you got choices. You have choices. You can go and do things or whatever, or by that time, you will have been able to make a decision about the direction that you really want to go into, because so often
Mm.
kids go get out of school, they go into fields, and they spend 3 or 4 years in college, and they realize, I don't want to do that. I was talking to a girl in I went to JC Penney the other day, and she was at the register, She told me she was in school. She's had another job she said she wasn't going to work on Sundays. I said, why not? She said, because I have another job now. Don't tell anybody that. I said, okay, no problem. I said, are you in school? She said, yes. I said, what are you in school for? She said, well, my parents think I should go and be into
Uh-oh.
like medicine and that kind of thing. And, like a doctor or whatever, nurse or whatever. And I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to do it for forensic science. I said, all right. I said, I know your parents are paying for it. So if that's what you got to do, I say, but don't lose that. I say, because that's where your passion is. So stay with it. So I think whenever you discover that passion of what you want to do for life, you should be able to move in that area. So I would say, discover, try to understand, learn as much as you can, and see what pushes you in the direction of where that passion is lined up. And as you get out, then you'll have a good idea as to what direction you need to be moving in. And you won't have to just take like, this is it, because that's where you make the most money. Because making the most money all the time is not where you're going to get the
No,
best satisfaction, in. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
that's perfect. Now, before we get out of here, please tell people where can they find you? This is where you plug your website. This is where you plug your social media and
Okay.
get that going.
So my website is www.sjaysphotography.com. That's my website. Let me say it again. www.sjaysphotography.com. That's my website. So
Mm.
you can, see some of my work, and you can kind of like follow me there. And I'm on Instagram. I haven't done much on Facebook. Instagram, SJAYS dot photos. That's my Instagram handle there. So yeah, join me, and I hope to have more on Instagram. Get more active in that area. But you can definitely view my site and see some of my areas of where my work is.
There we go. You heard it here first. I think I say that whether people heard it here first or not. I think that's no
Hey,
one
there you
cares
go.
about you heard it here second.
There you go. Thank you so much, Tony, for this opportunity. And I was a little apprehensive at first, but I'm so glad you pushed through, and I feel so good having been here and having talked with you. My best to you.
Thanks, Mama J, for coming on and telling your story and being open and just sharing so much great advice for people to be able to watch and to internalize and take. And that's what this is all about. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you all go like, subscribe, download, share, rate, review. You all know the whole routine. Those things help tremendously. You know what would help more? Cop some merch. And that's how you can help me get and do this thing full time. So thank you all for watching and signing off. For Stephanie Jones, also known as Mama J, we will see you all in the next round.
Thank you.
Boom. Done.
Wow.
Man, that was good.